What's up, and welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Sebastion Malden, and in this episode, we got a really good one for you today. Because in this episode, we're talking about some of the best JRPGs and RPGs of 2023, at least so far. And I get it. I know what a lot of you are saying. You're probably saying, pump the brakes, dude. It's only been, 3 months into the year? Why are you already talking about the best games so far this year? But this year is a little bit different than the norm because it's been absolutely stacked in both RPGs and JRPGs. So I want to talk about this a little bit, and I knew for a topic of this magnitude, I had to bring in the big gun, so to speak. So my guest today is none other than Alex from the youtube.com channel, Backlog Battle. Alex is the perfect guest to have on. Over on his channel, Backlog Battle, Alex reviews JRPGs and RPGs like nobody else in the gaming industry, so I knew he was the perfect person to have on this episode. So in this episode, Alex and I are going to talk about his favorite JRPGs of the year, his favorite RPGs of the year, and some of his favorite games of all time. Not to mention, Alex is going to take on the ProNerd Trivia Challenge. We got all this and more coming right at you, right after the intro. DJ, start the intro, man! This is the Single Player Experience, the podcast that helps single-player gamers manage their video game backlog. I'm your host, Sebastion Malden, and my main quest is to help you manage your ever-growing video game backlog by letting you know which single-player games are worth your time and money so that you can have the best single-player experience. Now, without further ado, let's start the show. DJ, cut the beat. Hey everyone, like I said in the intro, we have a very special guest joining us today. He is one of the best video game reviewers on YouTube. He is a master of the JRPGs and RPGs, and he's currently the man watching One Piece. The one, in my opinion, one of the best animes of all time. I'm sure he agrees. This late into the game, I think he's like, 400, 500 episodes in now? Is that right, Alex?
That is correct. But what you didn't know is I've actually already watched all 1,000 episodes, and this is the rewatch.
This is the rewatch. I like that. So you probably already guessed it. This man is absolutely amazing. This is Alex from Backlog Battle. Alex, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. So yeah, I'm just so happy to realize that you're also a big One Piece fan because my wife and I have been such huge fans, and we watched through the entirety of a whole series in 1 year, and we're kind of trying to do it all over again this year for some reason because we're like, hey, we caught up to episode 1,100 something. Let's go back and do it all over again. But truly excited to be here. It's a real honor to be on the show and talking about games with you, and apparently One Piece.
Yeah, for sure. Before we migrate to games, I want to ask you a One Piece question. Who's your favorite villain of the show so far?
Oh dear. That's rough. Because there's so many good villains in the show. So many. I think right now I'm kind of leaning towards Doflamingo, because just the stuff that he did kind of ripples across several story arcs as well, the Smile Factory arc and stuff. That's one thing that I remember. And of course the things that he did in Dressrosa are just so vile and so crazy. In fact, when I was playing through One Piece Odyssey, which of course came out this year, I love that whole section of being able to relive that latter part of Dressrosa when things started escalating, and it really showed how powerful of a villain he is. In fact, right now in Marineford and stuff, I'm at the part where he pretty much I'm not going to mention it because it's kind of gross, but basically took down oars in Marineford, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that he did that. And and everybody else is just kind of underestimating him, and he's just kind of like that guy that's in the background waiting for an opportunity to strike, and at the meantime he's taking advantage of all these kind of loopholes in the government. And I find that really fascinating. And that's not to say that the emperors aren't as interesting, but I think from the warlord's perspective, given that he is practically the strongest warlord out of, and I don't count Blackbeard because he just keeps moving along.
Yeah, for sure.
It was such an interesting arc for Luffy to kind of experience and go through.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like, he feels like he's on the same level as a warlord in many ways, especially like strategically. And the fact
Yeah.
that, you, like you said, he is this master manipulator, so to speak. And like,
Yeah.
he might not be as strong as a lot of the emperors, but in a way, like the sinister like plots that he has, it's on par with everything they do as well.
Mm-hmm. And if you watch One Piece all the way from the beginning, you realize that he has like hooks in everything. Like Bellamy at Jaya, he literally like showed up there to say like, hey, you're not one of my people anymore, or whatever he did there. And that's like, only merely a few hundred episodes, if that, like into the series. Like he's already showing up there, and he keeps on positing this like new era of pirates that of course is going to happen once Marineford is done. I'm just like, that dude is just insane. And even though he's in Impel Down right now, I'm thinking to myself, he's not really in Impel Down right now. He's got his hooks on everything. He has a plan to get out somehow.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's crazy to me like how well Oda is as a writer, and how like well he like plans everything out, because like you said, that was a couple of hundred episodes in, and I'm like, he has so much like of a mastermind plan. I'm talking about Oda, that is, throughout the whole entire series, to where like everything feels like it matters.
Yeah.
Everything, no matter how small of a detail it feels like at the moment, it's like it always comes back into the later like arcs or later play.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I kind of decided this time around to kind of chronicle my rewatching on Twitter, so that way, like, people kind of also can see my journey through it, and almost kind of think like, if he's able to go through like 400, 500 episodes in a span of like, I don't know, like 3 months, maybe watching all 1,000 episodes of One Piece isn't so bad, right?
Yeah, yeah. You make it seem not quite as daunting as a lot of people think it is, you know?
And I feel like that kind of translates to a lot of the stuff that I do on YouTube. Is that, a lot of people take a look at JRPGs and stuff and see like, oh, it's anime games, but I'm like, but there's also a level of depth to it that you really can't find elsewhere, or rather, maybe more appropriately, the depth is kind of found in the different parts of these games. And I know that as a Western society, we always value like the realism and the voice acting, but then you go to these Japanese games, and I'm of course including Nintendo with this as well. They have this kind of very balanced way of making games within their budget, but also making it look and feel good as well. So I think that's also one of the reasons why I just decided, hey, I'll just keep making JRPG videos because I love the genre.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I feel like we could talk about anime like all day at this point, but
Yeah.
like, let's segue into the video game sphere. For the people who may not know you, Alex, so can you introduce yourself to the audience?
So I have been on YouTube for almost 6 years now. By this May, I'll be on YouTube for about 6 years. And my journey through YouTube is kind of weird because I actually started all the way back in 2009. I ran a very kind of experimental channel called Games and Me, and people can still search for this, by the way. And I was like, so overweight and out of shape at the time, so I don't look like that anymore. Caveat. And the idea behind that channel was to kind of, be this communal way of enjoying games together. And it was during that time that I also kind of experimented with live streaming, and I had a whole bunch of friends playing games with me. We tried live streaming the Justin TV at the time, but it didn't work. So we kind of started focusing on YouTube. And for one reason or another, that whole idea kind of fell apart because, of various reasons. And then I went into the podcasting space, and I did that with my partner at the time for, man, like 10 years, for about a decade. Because I told myself, look, I love making things, right? And I think doing this for 10 years is going to be really awesome, just to kind of see how far we can take this show, right? And right around towards the end of its run, I kind of wanted to do a lot more than just what I was doing. And so I decided to go on Twitch. I tried my hand at that, and I was fairly successful. I actually had like 100 concurrent viewers at the time that I left. And then I left because then I started dating my wife, who was, my then girlfriend, now my wife. And one of the things that we both kind of talked about is that if we're going to have a healthy relationship, just judging from a lot of our Twitch partner friends, because she also used to be a streamer, there's no healthy way to manage a healthy lifestyle that allows you to step away from streaming, but still also find success on the platform without making it 100% full time.
Yeah.
So around 2017, I kind of started experimenting with YouTube again. I opened up the Backlog Battle YouTube channel, which honestly, like I'd made, many years prior. And then I started just uploading clips of my podcast, right? And then I started, experimenting with all sorts of types of things. And I kind of wound up doing reviews. Like at the time, I didn't really want to make reviews, but then, when I started doing them, like it kind of made me feel good. Like it was like, hey, this actually might be my shtick, like reviewing games. And, long story short, here we are 6 years later, I'm still reviewing games. I have contacts for like a whole bunch of people in the industry now, and people reaching out to me like Square Enix saying like, hey, do you want to review Octopath Traveler 2? And I'm like, well, do I? I was going to play it anyway, but now that you mention it. And it's just been a total blast ever since. It's been such a crazy, wild journey through social media. And I just love it.
So let me ask you a question. Like, you've been in this industry for a while now. What is like your fondest game review?
My fondest game review. Ooh, that's the thing. Like every review that I make is pretty special in my opinion, because I'm always the kind of person to try something new. So let me give you an example. So very recently, I reviewed a game in the Netunia series. It was like their action game and whatnot, Sisters versus Sisters. And of course, there's a whole bunch of games that were out. So as with many games, I gave it my fair shot. Never played a Neptunia game before. And it's just sat down and kind of like, tried to play it and understand why people like that sort of game. But this was one of those games that I really couldn't wrap my head around, because I think there was a quality issue with it that I feel, hardcore fans are quick to forgive. That for me, not because I'm used to like high polished games, not at all, but there's just something slightly off about it. And so instead of like forcing myself to be miserable and playing through the entire game, I thought of like a creative way to express my own displeasure without making fans feel bad about, my critiques of the game. Like, basically I wanted both fans and non-fans alike to kind of laugh along with me and share this experience of playing through the game, at least the first few hours of the game, in a way that is also enjoyable. And so I was thinking to myself, how could I do that? How could I exactly do that? And then there was an idea that popped into my head, that a conversation that I had from a friend of mine a long time ago, who said, man, finding games to play is like dating. And I'm like, oh, what did you say? It kind of popped into my head. And so the idea behind that video, that review, which has a question mark at the end, is what if I was dating Sisters versus Sisters and it was a first date? And because we're just not compatible, there are little quirks that kind of are making me push myself away from it. Why don't we depict it that way? And so that's exactly what happened. It was literally a 4 to 5 minute video of me, on camera, green screen. We were in Paris. And yeah, like I just kind of let her off the hook, I guess.
I feel you. That's really cool. It's almost like playing a mini game in a video game, so to speak, or like a dating sim. Basically reviewing this game like that.
Yeah. I had that idea originally, but that was too much work. So I kind of figured like, let's just, set the appropriate tone and roll with it. And people loved it. I was like really surprised, but that kind of outlines the approach that I have with all my reviews, is that not one review is going to be like formulaic and the same as the other. There's certain things that need to be different in each, which is why I make these reviews, not just for people who are interested in it, but also people who might not just be interested in it, but just likes entertaining content.
Oh, that's a good perspective of looking at things too. And like you always seem to have a nature of keeping things fresh. Do you ever feel like there's a challenging aspect of like I have to kind of like think of a review from a different angle when you're coming at like different reviews throughout the year?
If it's not from a different angle, it's a different style of doing things. Like my Trails to Azure review that I just came out with was done completely with just barely any sort of script whatsoever. It was all outlined. So normally, like I would write a full script and then kind of refine it and then, like compose the video. But in this case, I thought to myself, well, I don't want to rehash what I said in Trails from Zero because it's practically almost the same game with a few new features. It's just a continuation of that story. So let's try to make this a little lighter for the people who, let's face it, if you're not going to watch a review unless you're 100% sure you want to continue your story from zero. And I think where a lot of this comes from is this kind of desire to make just really good and entertaining videos that you don't normally see in the JRPG space. Because like I think my approach is that I want to have fun making the video as much as I had fun like playing the games, and I want to impart that enjoyment of playing video games into any of the videos that I make. One video that I made recently was on the JRPG debacle, like the term and stuff being some sort of pejorative, from taken from the Japanese developers perspective. And I'm really proud of that as an example, because I actually managed to toe the line between critical discourse and just the uplifting nature of the channel, which I think not a lot of people can do something like that deliberately in their work, like unless they have this really weird fine-tuned idea of how everybody everybody in their community feels after watching it. And in this case, so many people in that comment thread thanked me for the way that I talked about it, the empathy that was demonstrated. And I think that's where it really comes from, is this kind of feeling that I want to make people laugh and smile at the end of the day. And if it's because of my videos, then that's good enough for me.
That's great, man. Have you always been an entertainer?
No, no, man.
It seems like it comes so natural to you, man.
And that's and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Like, no, the funny thing is, like, I used to be a really big shut-in.
Oh wow.
Back in around 2010, like when I was doing Games and Me, like I was still kind of awkward back then too. Like anybody who watches my videos back then will see like, oh yeah, you're totally awkward. And it might sound like I'm putting on a front or anything like that, but this is just literally how I am. Like this is how I am with my wife, my friends. We have like some really kind of rousing discussions and stuff. And maybe part of that is like the podcast voice, because I did it for like 10 years or something. But for the most part, like right now, I have no script. We're just talking. And
yeah, for sure.
This is just how I am. I've never really seen myself as an entertainer, but it's great that you think so.
No, I mean, it's because of the nature of your videos and the way you and I are talking. It feels so natural. And I'm like, you can always, I've interviewed a lot of people now, and I can always tell when someone has that it factor whenever it comes to like they're just naturals at this. And it feels like that with you. Like it feels like maybe it's the 10 years of podcasting, or maybe you got on the mic one day and you were just like killing it and just from day one. But it feels that I have that natural feeling talking to you,
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to force me to do karaoke in front of people. Let's put it that way.
What would be your karaoke song though?
Oh my gosh, the Juness song from Persona 4. I don't know.
I like that. Hot take though. I mean, I think Persona 5 has a better soundtrack than Persona 4.
Ooh, they're two different soundtracks though. Like I love the jazziness of Persona 5. I mean, they're immediately as soon as you mentioned Persona 4, like I just the song that plays when you're in the pyramid, it just started playing in my head, like that bass line. Ooh, like
it's iconic.
It's really good. But then when I go and think about like Persona 4, for example, it's a lot of very much like, hey, we're in the countryside kind of, vibe, rural vibe that has a tinge of pop. And, and that kind of, I feel, shows more about Shoji Meguro's talent as a composer, because really, like, that dude is talented. Like, I wonder like what he listens to and whatever, like, to be able to get these really kind of solid tracks that are just become timeless.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Because I'm like, earlier this year, I was replaying through Persona 3, and then like I had never played Persona 4 before. Like I kind of missed out on that one, so I was playing it for the first time, and that was one of the things that really stuck out to me about those games. Is like the music in there. It gives it a life. It gives it an ambiance. It gives it kind of that soulful flavor, and then like it is a completely different genre than Persona 5. Like you mentioned, it feels like a completely different world than that game, but yet they all still feel really good though. Like they're really easy to listen to.
Yeah. It's crazy because there are people that I hear sometimes that say like, oh, when I'm grinding JRPGs, I turn off the music. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? And I get that sentiment, because sometimes some people do listen to podcasts like yours, like while they're grinding. And I think that's a really good thing to do. But at the same time, like if you want to immerse yourself into the world, you also kind of want to hear these songs and stuff, like immerse yourself in like the dialogue. And I think what's really cool too is that while it's very late, there's a lot of Japanese developers that are realizing that they could lessen the amount of UI clutter that's happening by kind of offloading a lot of that information using audio. So like there's certain characters that'll be like, hey, like, how about me? And then you switch to them and you kind of do the attack from them. And that way there's no like weird busy UI that happens where it's like just things flashing in your face and you don't know what to do because it's trying to tell you too much.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good
totally.
point. I never thought about that, but that is a very good point. Like like I was going to segue into what I thought was to be the topic of the show, and that would be like the best games you've played so far this year. But I want to ask you a question before we get to that.
Sure.
Because like you made me think here. The evolution of JRPGs and RPGs have become like, I feel like they're subtle like evolutions that people don't quite pick up on, but like they're there. Like you see like the way like Persona 5 in general streamlined the way combat works. You looked at the way like an indie game I played late last year, Jack Move, where like they kind of like you can adjust the levels of like the grinding meter, so to speak, to where like enemies might frequently pop up or like not show up at all depending on like the way you walk and such like that. Like how do you feel about the evolution of JRPGs and RPGs?
It's been an interesting thing to watch over the past few years, because I feel like obviously there are multiple genres of RPGs, right? Like there's the Western style and then there's the Japanese style, and they're kind of expanding into very different directions. I want to focus more on the JRPG side because obviously like I'm more familiar with that as of this time. I think like what's very interesting about JRPGs is that they're kind of doubling down right now on what made this style of gameplay popular to begin with. Right after Persona 5, Katsura Hashino, of course, famously decided to, I guess technically like leave Atlas, but all he did was make another development studio called Project Zero with the intention of making a Super Nintendo RPG inspired game that still has the modern conveniences of something like Persona. And this was called Project Refantasy. And again, like one of the things that they started posting just to kind of hype themselves up, so to speak, is, are kind of pieces of artwork that kind of allow them to put their heads in that frame of mind of creating those games. So as an example, they made a fake cover, for a Genesis game that was titled Project Refantasy with that artwork, and going over to the Square Enix side, when Bravely Default came out, Team Asano is basically like now responsible for kind of creating HD 2D style games, and of course Bravely Default, to kind of honor that style of gameplay and try to improve upon that and create modern conveniences that make these games a bit more approachable, right? Like Triangle Strategy is obviously one of them. They remade Live Alive last year. They want to remake Dragon Quest 3, and so on and so forth. And I think what what this really means is that the Japanese are kind of learning that they could still keep moving forward by still kind of taking a lot of the lessons that they learned from the past. And I think there's a value to that, because as the West keeps spending more and more money on more expensive development projects, like there's got to be like a good balance to make sure that not only can people still make games and games that they love, but also do it in a responsible way, right? Nintendo's been doing this for years. There's no reason why other companies can't learn to do the same damn thing, even though, like they make more cartoony style games. When you look at something like Metroid Prime Remastered, yeah, it's not really cartoony game. So they're doing something there, right? And I think that Japan has, a pretty good idea of what to do right now that I feel like the West could learn a lot from.
Oh, that's good, man. I love the elaborate explanation there, man. You like, I can tell you've been doing this for 10 years because you're absolutely killing it.
Thank you.
So
and to keep in mind, like, I don't normally voice a lot of these opinions on the channel because, again, it's all about happiness and kind of joy and bringing the joy of games back to people. So it's rare for me to be able to express these sorts of opinions on any platform. So I'm really happy to be able to share a lot of this knowledge with you guys.
I'm glad I got that secret juice now out of you. So I gotta ask you. I want to ask you, like, you've been playing so many JRPGs and you've been playing so many games this year. I want to start by, what are your top 5 games of all time?
Top 5 games of all time is pretty tough, but Persona 4 Golden is probably the top one, because when the original came out in 2008, I was actually not a JRPG fan. Like, I've been playing JRPG fans at the time. Yeah, right. Can you believe it?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I was playing like Call of Duty at the time. Think about that.
That shocks me. Like, that shocks me. Based on everything I know about your channel and like our conversations just now, I can almost imagine you as a baby with a controller in your hand playing something like Ogre Tactics or something,
Right? Yeah, it's weird because, it was during that time that I didn't have a lot of time for long RPGs, although I dabbled every single year and I was more of a Final Fantasy fan, but I rarely dabbled beyond Final Fantasy, right? And I think what really pushed me to experiment was more of a displeasure on the direction of where Square Enix was taking some of their titles. Granted, they're not all bad, of course, like looking back, but at the time I just wanted something new. And then Persona 4 came around and I was just like, what? They have like an art book with it? What? They have a soundtrack with it? And so, I just kind of fell in love. And keep in mind that at the time, I did play through Persona 1 and still had my PS1 copy of Persona 2, Innocent Sin. No, Eternal Punishment, sorry, at the time. So, to me, seeing Persona 4, comparing both of those generations of Personas is like night and day. It's like these two could not be any more different. Let's see. Let's do this top 5 really quick so that way we don't get stuck here, because I could get us stuck here for a while.
No, it's all good.
I think number 2. Let me think.
You're actually gonna like number them and everything. You're not just gonna list out 5 games. You're gonna go in order.
I mean, we started with the top one, which is Persona 4. And I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff. Number 2 would probably be Mass Effect 2, which again would be surprising, right? It's a JRPG channel, but I've always believed that BioWare is like a Western RPG company that knows exactly what the Japanese is doing right in terms of character development. So it's not a surprise to me that, Mass Effect 2, which is probably like one of the highlights of the series, is pretty much like up there when it comes to RPGs. Let's see. Number 3, maybe, no, for sure, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. So we're back to RPGs. So I don't typically like tactical RPGs, and a lot of my fans know this, but it's only the past few years that I've really kind of gotten into it and really got my hands dirty on the genre. But this one, which came out around 2020, is just absolutely brilliant because it does something that no other game does, which is to separate the story from the gameplay. And again, like, so what makes that unique is that you're not just doing like story, and then battle. You literally can do as much battles as you want, or as much story as you want, or a mix of both. there are places where it'll lock you out and force you to do either story or battles, but for the most part, you dictate how you go through the game. And I thought that was just brilliant. And on top of that, the bonkers story that they're telling, which is just up there in terms of confusion and just amazing reveals, is just unforgettable. Literally one of those games where you wish that you could just replay through all over again and wipe your brain of everything. Number 4, I think for me would be, and I'm just going to say this, the top 5 is not in any order, even though I'm numbering them. It's just for me to remember how many I've said. Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yes.
Love that game. And I think what's really cool about it is that, and this may be a minor spoiler, but it's the reason why Yakuza is no longer called Yakuza. It's called Like a Dragon now. Mm-hmm. This is the game that tells you exactly why. And the fact that they were able to incorporate that into the storytelling itself and almost make that pretty smooth transition from Yakuza to Like a Dragon using this game is just brilliant. But also really cool, Ichiban is there, great protagonist, and that story, that development of like where he came from, what kind of person he is, and the fact that he is like a Dragon Quest fan is just absolutely phenomenal. Like that game is something that we almost played through on the PS5 when that came out as well. I can't wait for the sequel.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And then number 5, I think it's easy for me. It's like Final Fantasy 14. I've been a Final Fantasy 14 fan since 2014 when it came out on PS4. And, my wife and I play it regularly. It's the perfect casual MMO that, I've had friends like try out and, responsibly play, not like any other MMO where they're like, oh, I have to log in every week. It's become like a very cool social thing for me and my friends. And it's got a great story and gameplay to boot. So, I hesitate to bring up the Final Fantasy 14 meme, which has the free trial all the way up to level 60 and, including the award-winning Heavensward, but you've all heard it.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that's your chill and relax game? The game you just unwind to, the game you just relax to when you're not basically reviewing 10,000 games at one time?
Yeah, it's, it's like an afternoon where you can kind of turn off your critical brain, just do raids and, dungeons with your friends, do the weeklies and just, catch up on the week. It's like, it's like if you can imagine me like having a cup of coffee while we're doing like raids. I'm a healer in the game, so, I don't have to be doing DPS a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's pretty much that. It's exactly that. It's a very chill game and it's just great playing with friends.
I got you. So, I want to segue to 2023 games because like you've been playing a lot this year. But before we get to like your favorite games of this year, I want to ask you, with the games remaining left in 2023, what's on your most anticipated list?
Easily the first thing that comes into my head is Final Fantasy 16 because, of course, Naoki Yoshida, who's the producer and director of Final Fantasy 14, that's what he is producing. And Naoki Yoshida has a very interesting perspective on video games in that he's the kind of guy that is also truly a gamer. It's not like, the whole, walking a walk, talking a talk kind of thing. He literally played MMOs before he joined the Final Fantasy 14 crew. And even before that, he helped design Dragon Quest X, which is also an MMO. So this guy loves video games and a story. In fact, there have been many photos of him at BlizzCon, checking out the competition, but really he's just, a fan of Blizzard games too. So, and seeing him talk about Final Fantasy 16, him and his crew, like really made me super excited about it because this is a guy who knew that Final Fantasy should be dragged into the action game genre. Because over the past few years, we've kind of had these half steps towards action, starting with like, in a way, Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy 13, and then of course, Final Fantasy 15 with, Noctis and the boys, and that particular game was a weird half step because it's an action game, but you had to babysit all your other party members too. And then, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, where they had like the quote unquote standby mode, which is another half step into action. And it didn't really like make people happy because by compromising the action, you've literally compromised it for everybody else, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And so when Naoki Yoshida basically said, you know what, let's just full on make an action game. Let's hire the combat designer for Devil May Cry 5. Let's get inspired by the Ivalice, you know, storylines from Final Fantasy 12, Tactics, and, you know, Vagrant Story. And this is going to be 16. And once he said that, I was like, cool, I'm down. I know you're exactly what you're doing. Yeah.
So I gotta ask then, if just chaos happens in the gaming industry and they announce like a Dragon 2 is coming out this fall, like Final Fantasy is coming out this year, and Persona 6 was announced for this year, would that still be the number one anticipated game on your list?
Ooh, that's tough.
I gotta hit you with some tough questions.
That's the thing. The thing is, though, like, I'm known too much about the industry that I know for a possibility. I know for a fact that we're not getting a Persona 6 this year.
No, for sure not.
And of course, Like a Dragon 2 is not slated this year. It's for next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I still would say I would probably be more excited about 16 because I do have a lot of faith in what they're trying to do. And I stand by what I said when, you know, I critiqued the fact that the half steps towards action is what really held back the Final Fantasy series over the past few years. You know, there's a reason why nobody does something like that, like these half steps, because you are compromising the game design. So like when Yoshinori Kitase, who's the producer of Final Fantasy VII Remake, said, oh, we're going to add like a turn-based mode in Final Fantasy VII Remake, like my doubt meter started ringing. I was like, there's no way. There's no way this is going to be like the original Final Fantasy VII. And sure enough, it didn't. And it just frustrated people because there is a prevailing thought that Final Fantasy should be turn-based. But I think this is coming from the notion that Square Enix doesn't know how to make an action game. And I think Final Fantasy 16 is a great statement piece to say, actually, we hired the right people for this. This is a real Final Fantasy action game. And this is our vision of what that looks like. Non-compromised by by anything. And I do really think that 16 is going to turn a lot of heads.
Man, I'm excited for it. Like, do you already go into that knowing what your play style is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine I'm just gonna play it like Devil May Cry 5 or something, you know, like doing combos and everything. I mean, this guy who is doing the combat design, he single-handedly made some of the most exciting combat decisions for Devil May Cry 5. Like, one of the things I love about that game is that, you know, like other players can quote unquote play alongside you, like, you know, as you're doing your combos. And I thought that was a bonkers idea. But, you know, he was able to execute it pretty well. So, you know, who knows what that means for 16 or if it even materializes in some form in that game, you know?
That's interesting. So I got to segue into the weirdest question you probably ever got asked. But if Kirby absorbed you, what kind of powers would Kirby get?
Oh, man. I think, I actually thought for some reason, like, you know, what would he spit out? Like when you gave me that question, like, and I'm like, I think the power that he's probably going to get is the ability to create things. So maybe like, you know, being able to paint things or sculpt things or something. Because I grew up with a family that loves, you know, indulging themselves in the arts. And whenever I tell this story, it's kind of funny because I kind of saw my aunts and uncles like they're like a group of, you know, Super Sentai characters, you know, like, you know, my uncle is really good at, you know, kind of gardening and kind of the more carpentry type tasks, like the handyman type of tasks. My one of my aunts is really good at, you know, fashion design. My other aunt is good at music. My mom is really good at interior design, and my grandma is really good at floral design. So that's 5 people right there whose lives like really inspired me to pursue the creation of things. And I think at my age, which a lot of people think I'm younger, I'm 43 years old. A lot of the look on your face.
Yeah, because I was just like, I thought you were younger than too as well. I'm like, you sound so youthful.
Thank you. It's a lot of water. You know, just kind of taking a lot of those inspirations from my 5 relatives and stuff. Even my dad is like a big, you know, kind of technology nut. Like he actually owns his own business and stuff. Like just a confluence of those things really affected me and how I perceived art and growing up. And of course, naturally, I want to take the time to also thank my fourth grade teacher who, also kind of opened my mind on what art could really be, apart from just, the typical painting, drawing, and sculpting kind of thing. I still remember there was like a drawing by Picasso done for Stravinsky. He was drawing Stravinsky, and my fourth grade art teacher basically said, "Okay, turn that upside down. Try to draw the image upside down, like fix it." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And just doing that like very simple exercise kind of allowed me to unshackle myself from like the traditional definitions of art, and I was able to see things already very differently at a very young age. Even then, like I was like, I remember during that time too, I actually taught myself to do programming because at the time I wanted to do, to make like video games. And I was like, it's crazy because I was like in fourth grade, teaching myself programming. But yeah, all that stuff happened. It's been kind of a crazy ride, as you can tell.
It really has been. So like, you've been creating for a very long time at this point. You like from fourth grade all the way to now. Like, do you feel like what was the biggest things you've learned along this journey?
Let's see. I think one of the things that I learned is that copying others is only part of how you understand things and make your own work. And the reason why I say that is because I typically give away a lot of my ideas for free. But the secret to that is that I'm the only one that understands why. And that's actually key to growth, because if you're just copying people, it's only a matter of time until the copying catches up with you. And then all of a sudden it's old and stale now, but by understanding why people make the decisions they make, you actually get a different sense of appreciation for the work, and also putting your own stamp onto what you're quote unquote copying, that in a way you're turning it into your own work. Now, I'm not in the habit of copying other people's work, but I think another way to describe that is to watch and kind of learn and really question what and why people make certain decisions when they're making certain things, whether it's a TV show, a movie, even reality shows for that matter. Like I'm a huge RuPaul Drag Race fan, and I always question some of the production decisions and editing that they do. Like, one of the things my wife and I talk about is like, oh, the way that they're editing this person means like this person's going to get ejected from the show. And sure enough, they get ejected from the show. And those sorts of things. And not a lot of people approach the media they consume in that way. Like a lot of us just kind of consume. But I just think about like how much richer our lives would be if you added just a question or two of what you're watching. It doesn't have to be like something, world changing or anything. It's just, something for your own education. And you'd realize that there's so much wonder and just so many things to learn from the world that, you just can't learn by yourself. And you kind of have to take that and try to ask yourself, like, well, what does that mean to me? What does that say about myself, asking these sorts of questions, and why am I answering them that way?
Oh, wow. So you're always constantly evolving and constantly learning, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I said like every review is different, whether people notice it or not. To me, like I see what's different. But, every time like somebody says, oh, this is a great video, it's the best you've ever made, I think to myself, well, thank you. You didn't actually know like what went into that. But the fact that subconsciously my audience can enjoy it, I think that's what brings joy to me too. And that's really what counts.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like the way you talk and the way you talk about like your evolution and the way you think and everything. You almost strike me as a pro athlete in the way that like, they're always having to study film and the way they're always evolving and such like that. It's very Kobe Bryant-esque, and I really admire that about you.
Thank you. I wouldn't compare myself to Kobe Bryant, but I have heard of interesting things about, Steph Curry and how he
Mhm.
kind of approaches things too. There's a book that I was reading recently that kind of talked about Steph Curry and how, like Steph Curry doesn't all have good days, and what does he do during those off days that make him still feel, like integral to the team. Especially it's helpful now given that I'm trying to build a team of my own. So it's like these kinds of conversations about, group things like basketball, or as silly as it is, a RuPaul musical like on the show or something. These are all kind of informing me of, ideas of what I might want to try out, creation wise.
This just strikes me, and it's like a further illustration that people are layered. Like, like
Yeah.
I completely expected you to be a One Piece fan. The RuPaul thing throws me completely for a loop, and I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. It's just there's more to people than what you see on YouTube or what you hear in a podcast, so to speak. And I absolutely love that.
I wish I could talk more RuPaul in One Piece. Unfortunately, that's outside of the boundaries of JRPGs. Like,
Yeah.
I've tried my best to try to insert that somewhere, but people are like, man, RuPaul, I don't like that show, or, or One Piece, I don't watch anime. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I make sense of all this?
How do you have the time, man? That's what I'm wondering at this point. It's like you review so many games and you have videos coming out constantly. How do you have the time to watch RuPaul and One Piece?
See, that's kind of the interesting thing, is that, a long time ago, I encountered, and talked to a whole bunch of people who aren't necessarily even influencers or content creators. They're just, business people. And I think one lesson that they imparted on me is that if you incorporate the way that you see your creativity into everything that you do, there's always going to be creativity. So even watching TV, for example, there's a level of creativity there that you can't do elsewhere, right? Like, watching a TV show doesn't have to just be watching a TV show. It's also like opening discussions, talking about the stories, how they framed it, and all these sorts of things. And so, while it seems like I don't have time for a lot of this stuff, like, I actually do have just a normal time that everybody else has. When I pursued, YouTube, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to do this full time. I know that's risky because we're not making a lot of money yet, but, I just want to, make this my, 40-hour week job. And I stuck to that for the past 6 years. I told myself, it's a 40-hour week job. The job is actually making the videos, not playing the games. And I think setting that boundary actually made it a lot more fun. Like, knowing that, okay, your 9 to 5 is like either making videos or doing a lot of the admin/accounting work to make the business, stay afloat. And separating that from the actual work, rather separating the work stuff from the actual fun stuff, which is playing games, I found is like really the most important part. Like, I'm still, going to work much like everybody else is, except sometimes I can actually say, well, I have a block within this, 8-hour day, so I can play more games. So I'll do that for one day, and so on and so forth. And I guess this is all to say that it's a time management question, but also realizing that there's 24 hours in a day, and what you choose to do in those 24 hours is up to you. But, to say that, oh, you're locked in because of commute and my job and whatever you need to do, is kind of ignoring a lot of the other hours that you can spend actually pursuing your passion. And in fact, like, I see so many YouTubers and Twitch streamers doing exactly that. It's like, so many people still have their 40-hour week jobs, and yet they're managed to be Twitch partners in the span of a month or two, and really thriving even despite the hardships, and having fun to begin with. And I think that's also the other piece too, is that if you don't love it, then, then why are you doing it? Right. And to me, having that experience back in the games in me days, being, like trying to do a YouTube channel, really kind of informed me of like what it could be to make this like a full-time, source of income. And admittedly, we're not quite there, But like, there's no day where I'm not working hard to achieve that goal. And I'm just thankful for my wife and, her belief in me that I can accomplish something great here.
Man, that's magical. Like, I love that. I absolutely love that. I love the passion that you display in pursuing all this, and like it shows. Like your work, you always seem to be loving like a game and what you're doing and telling us about a game. So like, thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, I that's all I want. I want people to rediscover their love for games, because really we get so many bad news about games, whether it's companies or shady stuff they're doing. There has to be a counterbalance for that. We need more of that counterbalance in games news and everything. And I feel like I'm I don't know, rallying like the rest of the community and stuff to do something similar. So yeah,
it's always fun to have that positive spin on things, because like you're right, it is an industry that's oftentimes surrounded by negativity, and it's not like some of it's intentional, but most of it isn't. It's just like a happenstance of like sad natures of what happens in this industry. But it is one of those things to where like we often kind of like hide the goodness in the darkness of all that kind of like news and everything like that. So it's nice to have that positive outlook.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, because that's not what I am. But like, one channel that I really truly loved, we kind of started around the same time, and then I kind of noticed that they started changing, right? They started covering a lot more negative stuff as opposed to like more uplifting stuff. And it was my personal choice to stick with the more positive stuff. But because they shifted towards covering more controversial stuff, like his channel grew like big time, like huge, in the span of just a few years and stuff. And obviously he's known in the community and stuff, and I still love his work on occasion. But it's like, it's really, to me, that the reaction of the community to that is a great example that we really truly need a counterbalance to all this negativity, right? Like, a lot of people who even try to be positive online can't avoid being negative sometimes. Like on Twitter, like, I love the kind of funny people, but sometimes they can be prone to a lot of negativity as well. And I'm just like, no, that's a trap, people. It's a honeypot. You don't really want to do that. And, I think it requires a lot of thought to really think about like what to put out there, and to choose what you want to say out there. Like for me, like, to be quite honest, like I was a little uncomfortable even talking about like that one person and stuff just now. But I think, the best thing about, the industry in general are actually the good parts. And unfortunately, like as you said, it's being overshadowed by a lot of this negativity. Like, the Game Awards last year, like I wanted to revel in the excitement of talking about what won Game of the Year and stuff like that, like Elden Ring and all that. But then a lot of it is mired by like, how did they vote this stuff? Like these people don't know like what they're voting for. And I'm like, come on, this is supposed to be a celebration, and you're already poo-pooing the celebration, like,
yeah,
get over it.
For sure. Yeah. There is like there's a balance between being passionate and then that passion overshadow into negativity. And I think a lot of people quite haven't figured out that balance, to be honest.
And I think it's an ongoing process. I'm not just speaking for myself, but I think together as an industry, especially with the term doom scrolling being a part of people's vernaculars these days, it's kind of like, well, that's a pretty good indication that we need to change something for the positive.
Yeah, for sure. And you can be critical about things without being overly negative. I think, a lot of people lean to and almost embrace the dark side, so to speak, versus, being critical about something. But, I admire what you do, because like, we do need that light, not like the light night, so to speak. I was about to say like the dark night, but we basically already have too much darkness. So you're almost like the light night of the games industry.
Thank you. I think one of my inspirations actually comes from Ratatouille, of all things, because have you watched that movie?
Oh yeah, I love it. Love it.
So you remember the speech that Anton Ego says at the end after tasting the Ratatouille? So that pretty much, I feel, encapsulates a lot of my feelings towards criticism, like how, we should champion the new just as much as we're critiquing things. And I think, just finding that right balance is really the most challenging thing, because I almost see like video creation and scripting my reviews kind of like a weighing scale of sorts, right? Like I have to obviously make sure that all the criticisms are on the table, but I also have to balance and make sure that a lot of the positive stuff, the truly positive stuff, is also brought to light. Because let's face it, a lot of criticism these days are mostly negative. Anybody can nitpick anything, but the most difficult part about doing game reviews is to find the best parts of games. Like it truly is, and I think it's a very underrated skill to be able to genuinely say like, oh, this game actually has this really good, even though this part isn't working quite well. So that's my personal take on it.
That makes complete sense. I admire that. Well, so like speaking of reviews and everything like that, what's been your favorite games of 2023 so far?
Oh, geez. Well, I have to mention One Piece Odyssey, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the fact that it is so true to the One Piece legacy and the storytelling, and even though it's like a side story, right? Like these kind of dream scenarios really spark the imagination. Like, we're talking about Marineford, right? Mm-hmm. And that game allowed me to relive Marineford in a very different way because, for any One Piece fans, who are in the know, Luffy didn't have his crew at that time.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But in One Piece Odyssey, he gets to go back to Marineford with practically his entire crew to see if there was even a way, if he could even stand a chance to, well, I'm not going to spoil it. You'll just have to watch it, everybody. It's only 500 episodes, man.
No biggie, just 500.
No biggie. And yeah, like I think that's, I think that's probably like one of my favorite games of the year, just because it's One Piece. It's great. Man, I'm trying to figure out the order here because I want to build up to something. Let's see. I also reviewed Wulong Fallen Dynasty. That is actually a really cool game. It's obviously a bit kind of buggy on the PC, but I like it because it's kind of like a cross between Neo and Sekiro, but not as hard as either game. It's actually easier. So from a Souls-like perspective, it's a great kind of introduction to the genre, even though it's still kind of punishingly hard for some people.
Oh, yeah. That first boss really gives it to you, though, too.
Yeah.
Really gives it to you. But after that, I feel like it scales kind of downwards in a way to where it feels more accessible than any other Soulsborne game I played recently.
Yeah, the one boss is it. Mm-hmm. And then everything else is smooth sailing.
Yeah, for sure.
Just that one, really just that one. Let's see. I also love Fire Emblem Engage. Now, I know there's some people who say like, oh, the story is whack and whatever, but I think it's also missing, like what it was also trying to do, which is there's no sensible way to make a serious storyline with, getting a whole bunch of characters from Fire Emblem history, using them as rings and incorporating them into this adventure. There's no plausible way to do that I know of. I'm not a writer for a game, I wouldn't know. But as somebody who has experienced a lot of stories, it would look like a freaking carnival if they even tried to make it serious. So I think the approach of that is like, well, why not make it a carnival? Like, wait, let's make it silly. Why not? And I loved it for it. And the kind of thing that I really love about it ultimately is the gameplay, because the gameplay certainly didn't suffer from the change in thematics. A lot of people actually loved the level design of that game, and of course, like all the changes that they made with the battle system. They brought back the triangle kind of system for the weaknesses and strengths, which is great. And it's just awesome. Like I love that game. Like I had so much fun playing that game.
That's great. I almost wish, like, I think my perfect Fire Emblem game now is like engages gameplay with like 3 houses, like narrative and world building. I love Three Houses because of like the way we got to interact with the characters, the lore, the world that was built there. I think that like integrating both those aspects to me would be my perfect Fire Emblem game.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, like they kind of tried that obviously and Engage by having like specific fights for specific, you know, classic Fire Emblem characters. But, you know, something more expansive, I think, would be interesting, like you said. I think I want for my next one, I think I'll say Theorhythm Final Bar Line. And this is a game that I know a lot of my fans really, in a way, slept on because it's a rhythm game. I still don't agree with that sentiment. I think there's something really unique to playing a game of another genre that has some of those RPG elements that is also just as interesting, right? But I get it. There's some sentiments in my community where it's like, oh, I played a rhythm game and then I dropped it, which, you know, I totally get. I don't know how much of them actually played a Theorhythm game in the past, but to me, like Theorhythm Final Bar Line is not only a celebration of 35 years of Final Fantasy, but it's also an RPG too. You know, there's levels, there's different abilities you can equip. You can't just, you know, steamroll a song just because, you know, or you're really good at like rhythm games. You need to consider party composition. There's so many things to consider, you know, just playing through that game that elevates it just from being like a, I don't know, like Hatsune Miku clone or, you know, a Guitar Hero or Rock Band clone or something like that. Let's see. How many did I say? That's like 3?
I think that's 3 right there.
Okay.
But you were building up. I like the ramp up, so to speak.
Yeah. So okay. So to recap,
4,
I had
right?
4, I think.
Yeah,
One Piece.
One Piece Odyssey.
Yeah, because One Piece Odyssey, Fire Emblem, and then
Wulong,
Theorhythm, and Wulong. Okay,
that's 4.
Okay, that is 4. Man. Okay, so I think there's a lot of really good games. So
I'm telling you, it's a stacked year.
Yeah, the 5th one is pretty easy for me. That's Octopath Traveler 2. Like, it improved so much from Octopath Traveler 1 that it made a lot of the complaints from that game just seem trivial by comparison. Like, there's still things that they didn't do, like incorporating the party into somebody else's story. But I think what they did was they honed in on the quality of the storytelling on a per character basis, that making the other party members be involved in that story wouldn't make a lot of sense because of the higher stakes nature of each of the stories. But it also had a variety of different flavors. So like Temenos and Crick, it's really Temenos, but Crick is like his assistant, is more like a, you know, a Sherlock Holmes and Watson kind of story, for example. And then you have Casti, who is your resident amnesiac / you know, nurse, who once you go through her story, it becomes less about her amnesia and more about like, who the hell, you know, like what the hell happened to the world surrounding her. And then there's Particio, who's my favorite character in the series, who, you know, even though he's a merchant, he wants to practically take down capitalism, you know, like, you know, for the better good of the many. So, and it's just very kind of wholesome nature, you know, storytelling mixed with a whole bunch of different flavors, dark, otherwise, that, you know, it's almost like 8 different JRPGs rolled into one, but of course they're the same party. So I really truly enjoyed it. And it's, you know, on my channel, like I have a banner that I always update every time, like, you know, I feel like a good game is deserving of it. And Octopath Traveler 2 pretty much sits in the middle, which is actually the best spot for any game to be in on that rank, because you either fall on the left or the right side, but to be in the middle, those are only reserved for like the very special games.
Man, that's cool. You should have like almost like a banner legacy kind of thing. Almost like, you remember the Mortal Kombat towers, so to speak?
Yeah.
Where you can like it's almost like paying homage to how far you come. Like on the website, you should just do that. You know, like,
goodness,
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Like to kind of look back a year ago and be like, this is what this looked like a year ago. You know? Like,
yeah,
it would be crazy. Yeah, like for the longest time, 13 Sentinels was actually in the middle, and then it kind of kept getting pushed back by like Elden Ring and then Xenoblade, and who knows what else is going to take over that middle spot. It's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I got one final question before we move on to the final topic of the show, the final segment, so to speak. I want to know, like, if you have, what is the game or the games that you would give to just anybody where you would like, you need to check out this JRPG, even if you're not a fan of JRPGs?
That's a very good question. I don't want to make it a cop out and be like, well, who am I giving it to? But I think for me, the most immediate thing that comes up, excuse me, for some reason I'm like hitting puberty or something. I think Tales of Arise. Okay. Because like that's an interesting game to me, because I think that bridges the gap between action players and turn-based players in very unexpected ways. Now, a lot of Tales fans will probably disagree with me on this, but the fact that the Tales series has wanted to have like a massive hit for a long time, and they finally have it with Arise, kind of shows that the industry and the fans are pretty much ready for an amalgamation of sorts, like blending some of the ideologies behind turn-based combat with something more action-based. And I think that, you know, out of all of them, you know, Tales of Arise did that quite well. There's still obviously like a lot of growing pains and a lot of that sort of thing, which is why like I made a guide for the game for combat. But for the most part, like that game success really showed people that, you know, like there's a hunger for this sort of gameplay, mixing real time and turn-based in meaningful ways. And the way that I described it back in the day was, it was almost like I was playing a more manageable version of Ultimate Marvel versus Capcom 3, because all you're doing in that is just like, all right, tagging out, and just, you know, it becomes that sort of gameplay that you'd see in that game. And, you know, and it's just so satisfying to take out waves and waves of enemies with so many cool powers. It's really, really cool. And I do think that that is certainly one of those games that'll, you know, make people, you know, turn around and be like, you know, maybe there's something to this genre that, you know, I haven't really taken a look at closely. Maybe, you know, this is the time to do so.
I like the recommendation. You played this on PC, I'm assuming?
I actually played it on PS5, but I do have the PC version. I played through much of the PC version as well. And so, you know, that's just how big of a fan of I am of this series at this point, that I loved it so much that I played it twice. In fact, when somebody gifted me a Steam Deck, I literally installed it on my Steam Deck and started a brand new progression on it, just because, you know, just for shits and giggles.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So now that you have the Steam Deck, is that one of your preferred consoles right now?
Yes and no. There are games that I just can't play that are even brand new on there. Not because, you know, Steam doesn't recommend it, but they literally crash.
Oh no.
On there. Yeah, there's this game called Redemption Reapers that I wanted to review, and I thought to myself, ooh, this is gonna be great on the Steam Deck. And literally when the opening movie plays, I can't do anything. So, you know, I've had to try to find time to, you know, sit down in front of my computer to play it. But I'm just like, oh, I really just want to play it on my Steam Deck. This shouldn't be that difficult, you know? So
man.
Yeah.
I feel you on that one. I feel you. Maybe, you know, this feels like Gen 1 of the Steam Deck. So maybe as, you know, maybe as like future iterations come out, we'll fully integrate like everything will be playable on that device, you know?
Yeah. I mean, right now, like, even though it complains that I don't have enough RAM, I'm actually able to play Forspoken even for a tiny bit on there. So the fact that like this one game, right, Redemption Reapers, doesn't want to run is just baffling to me.
It's the one stubborn one basically at this point, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was able to run the Resident Evil 4 remake demo. Why can't this other game play it? Crying out loud.
That is baffling. That is baffling. So, Alex, you got time for one last segment?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so this one is probably the hardest segment of the show, and you've been incredible so far. But I really hate to do this to you, but I'm gonna have to hit you with the hardest segment known to man. It is our Pro Nerd Trivia Challenge. This, Alex, is where I'm gonna ask you 5 different questions from 5 different topics of nerdy categories. If you get all 5 correct, then you earn the title of Pro Nerd. The record stands right now of just one person getting this prestigious moniker, but I feel like you're going to join them in the Pro Nerd Hall of Fame. Are you up to the challenge?
Let's do it.
All right, so this is almost who wants to be a millionaire, like, but without the lifelines, so to speak. So I have right here on my screen, right here to the right, the Wheel of Destiny. It'll spin randomly and land on, different topics, and that's where we're getting our topics from. So let's let it rip. Your first topic is in the realm of Pokemon. All right, on Gen 1, there is a Pokemon by the name of Seal. Seal evolves into which Pokemon?
Is it Spheal?
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is incorrect. Seal evolves into the Pokemon Dugong.
Oh, okay. I should have known this. Dugong is a thing in freaking One Piece.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah, I forgot about Dugong in One Piece. That's so funny.
I know.
That is so funny. All right, so let's spin the wheel right now. All right, so the wheel has officially landed on Disney. So I like that. I think you're prepared, but you hit us with a Disney reference earlier with Ratatouille, so I feel like you at least know your stuff on Disney. All right, so in a Goofy movie, what was the name of Goofy's son?
Max.
You got it correct.
Yeah. We just watched that like last year, so
oh my goodness, I love it. I love it. One of my favorite Disney movies, to be honest.
Yeah. Classic.
It is so good. It's so good. The Powerline soundtrack, oh, so good.
Yeah, it's great. Oh man, like I'm a big Disney fan, so if it lands there again, I'd be set. I'd be like, woo, yeah, great to me.
I like that. So, all right. Next up, we have Star Wars.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. What is the name of the Wookiees' home world? What is the name of the Wookiees' home world?
Oh man. Oh, I can't. It's almost at the tip of my tongue.
Are you excited for Jedi Fallen Order, by the way?
Yeah,
the Wookiee South.
That's just my answer. I freaking forgot. But yeah, I'm totally excited for it. I talked about the Jedi Fallen Order as a great Souls-like to start with, and that actually started a whole other debate.
I'm looking forward to that game. I feel like this is almost like the year for licensed games for some reason. Like it's just it seems like we've gotten quite a few of them. But the answer is Kashyyyk.
That was literally like what I was gonna say. Why didn't I say it? Oh my god!
Go with your gut.
Say it. I know. I should have just gone with my gut. Okay.
Go with your gut.
I'll do it next time.
All right. So you missed 2, you got 1, but you're doing pretty well so far. All right.
Okay.
So the next category is in the realm of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. What in the movie Iron Man, or in the Iron Man franchise, that is, what is Pepper Potts allergic to?
What is she allergic to? My goodness. I was going to say garlic. Let's go with garlic. I don't really remember.
All right. So she says, and I quote, there is only, did you know there's only one thing on earth that I'm allergic to? Strawberries. Allergic to strawberries.
What movie was that from?
That is from the movie Iron Man 2. I believe that is about about 42 minutes in, I want to say.
It's the one movie that I haven't rewatched more than once.
Oh, really? You only watched that one time?
Yeah, at the movie theater. And for, I don't know, like I think like I liked 1 and 3 a lot, and for some reason, like for part 2 and stuff, I'm like, yeah, it's cool that there's like a whip villain and stuff.
Whiplash.
Yeah, Whiplash, and I'm just kind of like, all right, I can move on to the next one.
It is the most forgettable one. I'll give you that. It is, let's be honest, this is the most forgettable out of the three.
It's tough to even remember a single thing about it, including the name of the villain, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you even asked that question, I probably wouldn't have remembered.
I understand. Yeah. The MCU has that sequel problem where the second one is probably the most forgettable if they have a trilogy, but except for Captain America, because I think that's probably one of my favorite MCU movies, The Winter Soldier.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Good. So good,
really good.
All right,
really,
So the wheel, on the final spin of the wheel, you have a choice between topic A or topic B. Like, as soon as you choose A or B, it'll let me know which one's A and which one's B. Which one are you gonna choose? Let's do B. All right. So I hope you're familiar with the realm of Harry Potter.
Okay, let's try it.
All right. So, all right. What type of animal did Professor McGonagall transform into? What was her animungus?
I'm just gonna guess and say lizard.
That was very close, but it was a cat.
That was not close. That was not close at all.
I feel like it was within the realm of something that a witch would have as a pet, or a wizard would have as a pet. A lizard, sure. I feel like that's in the realm of it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it has 4 legs. Why not, right?
Yeah. I mean,
one's vicinity.
One's an amphibian, but
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Man, I really suck at this. That's probably why I don't do trivia. But if I did say Kashyyyk, that would have been 2 points. Dang it! But I did it. So
go with your gut. Go with your gut. Yeah. But would you like to see what the road not taken would have been if you would chose A?
Sure.
All right. So if you would have chose A, it would have been in the genre I think you probably know pretty well. It would have been in Nintendo.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Nintendo, what was the highest selling Switch game of all time? Or what is currently the highest selling Switch game of all time?
I want to say Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And it's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah, it's insane how much that game sold. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it's almost to the point to where I'm like, if you have a Switch, you probably have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at this point.
More than likely. More than likely,
for sure. Yeah. Alex, it's been really fun having you on the show. Before you go, though, I want to say thank you, because it's been an honor talking to you. It's been an honor having you on the show, and I absolutely loved having you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really had a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to talk about a variety of different topics. And really, my hope is that for people listening and stuff, if you've ever been wanting to try out streaming, even just for a hobby, or even making YouTube videos, or heck, TikToks or something like that, and you want to try to do it, on a regular, I hope, my journey has inspired you in some way, because I do think that the more we create in this world, the better, we're going to have it, because I think there's so much destruction that's happening right now that we need more builders than there are destroyers. So I hope you can be a part of the creators of the world.
Man, you're absolutely killing this. You're absolutely killing this. I was gonna ask you before you go, do you have any words of inspiration to the listeners? And you already took care of that. So
okay,
Alex, you've wrapped everything up so smoothly. Instead of that, I'm gonna ask you, Alex, what is the food you're gonna be snacking on today?
I've actually avoided snacks, so maybe just animal crackers or something. Yeah, okay. Again, a wholesome snack or something.
Okay. I mean, what's dinner looking like today? What's on the menu there?
Ooh, it's a whole bunch of different things. It might be burgers. It might be I have a recipe for Mexican pizza knockoff from good. Taco Bell. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sky's the limit. Right.
Yeah, it sounds really good. Alex, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and I'd love to have you back anytime. In the meanwhile, though, thank you, and we will catch you at youtube.com/ dude, I blanked. Oh my gosh, I blanked. I was doing so well. I thought I was counting my chickens before they hatched because like I was just giving myself my flowers in my head. I was just like, Sebastion, you killed this episode. But youtube.com/backlog battle. Is there anywhere else you'd like to shout out? You know, the plug spot is all yours.
I think pretty much like you'll find me on youtube.com/backlog battle. And, you know, if you post a comment and stuff, there's a high likelihood that I'll respond. I'm just really in the trenches when it comes to my community because, you know, like I want to keep this place as positive and very kind of, you know, for the love of games as possible. So if you place a comment there, I'm pretty sure I'll say hi and even respond to what you're saying. So hopefully I see you there.
Man, I was doing so well. I was like, I was counting my chickens before the hatch. I was like, Sebastion, you did the damn thing today. And I was just like, yeah, tripped up at the end. But regardless, thank you so much for being on the show. Until next time, we will catch you later. Bye, Alex.
Bye.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, hit that like button. Also, for more videos just like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right here. Thanks again for watching the video, and for more like it, stay right here at the ProNerd Report channel. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Also hit the subscribe button for more videos just like this one. I also want to let you know about the Single Player Experience Discord server. It's a perfect place for single player gamers to talk about the good single player games that they've been playing lately and to get video game recommendations. Think of it kind of like a book club for single player gamers. The link to join will be in the description. Once you're in, feel free to share your video game backlog list, talk about the good single player games you've been playing, or give your feedback on the show. If you have a game you think it should be recommended and should be reviewed, let me know about it right there. Before we go, I just want to thank you once again for listening to today's episode. Stay safe, stay gaming, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace.